we're going to look back at the drama and controversy of the last Test match played here at the Oval between England and Pakistan 4 years ago.
Ball's gone out of shape, or something is worrying Pakistan, and the umpires are inspecting it, and it looks as though they've decided they're going to call for a replacement. Darren O'Hare is waving to the dressing room. There's definitely a little, I think, not impassioned dispute going on here, but there is a considerable debate. Inzamam and Hare are looking at each other eyeball to eyeball, and Inzamam clearly wasn't happy with whatever decision had first been made. Darrell Hare is tapping his left shoulder as if to show one short. It looks as though the problem with the first ball, if that's what we're looking at now on a close-up, was a bit of damage to the ball, perhaps from hitting a boundary ball close to the seam. Or was it something more sinister? I don't know, but well, it's not impossible.
This is quite interesting. No, the umpires are out there, and the England batsmen are ready, but there are no Pakistan fielders out there.
Oh, there's my conspiracy theory then. Wasn't a Chinese whisper.
So what's going on here? The umpires are there.
Come out, are they? Well, now that would be a different story. That would be a story, wouldn't it?
Well, umpire Hare is walking away from the stumps. Umpire Doctorow is standing by them at the near end. The England batsmen, I can see them. I can see Ian Bell jogging on the spot, and the television camera is focusing on the Pakistan dressing room, and the door is closed. We don't want to jump the gun, but this has the making of a much bigger incident, doesn't it, altogether? No announcement has been made to the crowd. They must be wondering what on earth is going on here. I mean, there'll be people listening on radios around the ground, and you know, those headphones, can't you, which provides you with the television commentary or our commentary, so there will be people out there who know what's going on from our commentary and television commentary. But there will also be people who just probably had a couple of drinks today and came down and chat with their friends who probably aren't even real aficionados of the game, people who don't know absolutely everything about the game, who will be wondering really what is going on. And the umpires have taken the bails off.
That's it.
They're not taking the stumps out at the moment, but they've taken the bails off and they're walking off again. Well, that was an extraordinary incident as well.
Simon? Thanks very much. I've just been into the dressing rooms here, and I've got Shahriar Khan, who's the chairman of the Pakistan Cricket Board, with me. I've just run up the steps, so I'm just ever so slightly out of breath, so bear with me. What on earth's going on from your point of view?
Well, from our point of view, the boys were extremely upset at the slur of ball tampering, and as a result they wanted to register a protest with the match referee for the unilateral decision that the umpires had taken. Once we'd done that, we were ready to go out and play. The boys went out themselves, but it appears that maybe the umpires are now unwilling to go out. We are still hoping very strongly that the umpires, seeing that there's a house full, seeing that there was a certain issue, will go out and the match can start again.
Now, what's happening in the cricket? Will there be a test match tomorrow? Jonathan Agnew, any news from the Oval?
Well, we think it's coming very soon, Ian. It's a little bit difficult to coordinate all of this. But David Collier is expected to give a statement in a few moments' time. He, of course, is the chief executive of the ECB. They've been negotiating long and hard into the night to try and work things out. There'll have been a lot of contact with the ICC in Dubai, of course, with a 4 or 5 hour time difference.
Okay, when we're ready, thank you.
Let's just hear from David Collier.
Gents, apologies that it's taken us some time to get down to see you, but the statement on behalf of the International Cricket Council, the England and Wales Cricket Board and the Pakistan Cricket Board is as follows. After lengthy negotiations which resulted in agreement between the teams, the ICC match referee and both ECB and PCB to seek to resume the 4th Empower Test match on Monday, it was concluded with regret that there will be no play on the 5th day. The 4th Empower Test match between England and Pakistan has therefore been forfeited, with the match being awarded to England. In accordance with the laws of cricket, it was noted that the umpires had correctly deemed that Pakistan had forfeited the match and awarded the Test match, therefore, to England.
If you're just tuning in to 5 Live this evening, let's remind you of an unprecedented turn of events in London this afternoon when Malcolm Speed, the chief executive of the ICC, revealed that Daryl Hare, the umpire at the centre of the ball tamping controversy at the Oval, offered to resign in exchange for $500,000 US. Here's how Mr. Speed broke the news.
On Tuesday, 22nd of August, that is Tuesday of this week, I was handed a letter that had been written on that day by Daryl Hare to Doug Cowie, who was the ICC umpires and referees manager. When I received the letter, it's fair to say that I was extremely surprised by the content, and I was concerned as to how I should deal with it. In very broad summary, in the letter, Daryl Hare offered to leave his job as a top official in the ICC in exchange for a payment of $500,000 US.
Of course I wish to keep on being an umpire. I've umpired since 1985, and from the day I started umpiring, my career was in the hands of other people. People make assessments on my performance on a ball-by-ball, day-by-day basis, and that doesn't change even when you get to being an international umpire. So my umpiring performance and career is there, it's on public record, and if other people who have always made those decisions consider I'm still good enough to umpire, I will continue. What do I think? Yes, I do. Yes, why? I'm pretty bloody good at it.
Well, memories from 2006, and we will have a special interview with Daryl Hare in just a moment. But first, Andrew Strauss was the captain of England that day, and he's been telling me his memories.
The day started with us in a slightly precarious situation, so we were obviously concentrating on, trying to get ahead of them in our second innings and try and set them a reasonable total. It became apparent that the umpires were looking to see if something was happening with the ball. Daryl Hare in particular was kind of turning around to see how they were shining the ball, etc. And it looked like there was something going on. The two batsmen in the middle had the feeling that there was something going on, and then obviously they were deducted those 5 runs and everything kicked off. So
by going on, do you mean that they felt that there was some tampering going on?
No, more that I think they could see that the umpires were looking very carefully to see if it was going on. Ultimately, we weren't all that much involved in it, but we had sort of front row seats in watching something that was pretty unsavoury and I suppose stained Test cricket to a certain extent. I remember we were talking about it the other day that our batsman walked out to bat after tea and kind of waiting for the Pakistanis to come out, and it dawned on them pretty quickly, we see what's happening here, they're not coming out and this is going to be a major incident. So, it happened very quickly. I don't think anyone quite knew how to react to it. And once the umpires and Inzamam had kind of put their cards on the table, it was quite hard to bring them back together and find a way of us getting back on the pitch.
I remember I was staying in your hotel that night, and I think it wasn't until I got back to your bar at about 10 o'clock and you asked me, you actually knew that the game was over.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was a lot of confusion as what it meant, whether there was any way of getting the game restarted again. I remember sitting in the match referee called us in, and we were trying to find a way of possibly getting the game back on, but it just seemed that, both Daryl Hare and Inzamam were very entrenched in their views on what had happened, and I suppose on each other to a certain extent, and it was one of those situations where Test cricket, or the game of cricket, was brought into everyone's headlines for the wrong reasons.
Do you think, just finally, that it's the right decision to have had the outcome of the match reverted? I mean, if a team is losing, say, and doesn't take the field, had it remained as it was reverted to, it would have been a bit of a mess, wouldn't it? I mean, Pakistan had to lose that game, didn't they? Absolutely,
yeah, because it sets a precedent that if you're losing a game and you're not unhappy with what's going on, you just walk off and you get the draw. So it was absolutely the right decision, and I was pretty surprised when the decision was changed in the first place. Thankfully, common sense has prevailed on that.
Well, now let's hear from the man who seemed to be at the centre of the action that day, Daryl Hare. Do the events of that day still weigh heavily on his shoulders?
I got over it many years ago, to be honest, after the court case, and I got back to doing what I wanted to do, and I finished umpiring a Test match at Trent Bridge. So, yeah, that was for me. That was certainly the perfect ending.
And was that for you, plus the fact that the outcome, the result of the match has again reverted back to an England win, does that, and the fact that you did umpire those 2 Test matches again after you were dropped from the panel, do you see that as vindication of what you did?
Look, I don't like to use the word vindication, Angus. It's really a matter of the fact that I knew exactly what had happened at the time, and I did my job to the best of my ability, which was in my ICC contract at the time. That's what they expected of us, to uphold the laws of the game and the playing conditions to the best of our ability. And I look back and think that I did do that. Yes, some things didn't go my way, and it was a pretty tough time, but I got back to where I wanted to be. I'm not a quitter, put it that way.
No, I think we know that. People will say, of course, Darryl, that you caught controversy with the Murali throwing incident as well. Is it just coincidence that you've been there, you've been present at 2 sort of pretty high-profile conflicts within the game?
Look, we want to look at 2 things there, Angus. The first thing is that I did what I believe was right in 1995, and the ICC subsequently changed the playing conditions to allow a degree of tolerance, which was their right. And I accepted that ruling, and I went on to umpire Murali in later life under a different set of rules. And also the fact that the match was again reverted to the correct ruling of a win to England by forfeit. Again, that it took some time, but it proved that the decision that was made at the time, under the laws of the game, and what we saw and the action we took, was proven to be correct. And that's all I really sort of care about, to be honest.
Do you think that the Muralitharan thing, Darryl, not tainted you, but made it easy for people to point the finger at you as a troublemaker or an awkward cuss? I mean, I remember a Test match in Pakistan in which you were blamed for giving Inzamam out. Do you remember the incident when Harmison threw the wicket down when he was bowling and so on? You were at square leg and Simon Taufel was at the bowler's end. In fact, it was a Pakistani umpire, a third umpire, who did actually give Inzamam out incorrectly, and in fact you got blamed for it. I mean, does that rather sum things up as far as you're concerned in a way?
Look, things could have gone either way there. All I saw was Inzamam's foot wasn't grounded behind the line at the time, and I did the right thing, I believe, by referring it to the third umpire. Yes, I did get blamed for it as the one who made the decision, but as you well know, there were 2 other umpires involved in that, and the decision was made by the third umpire, and I think that's, with decisions like that, that's exactly what they want us to do. Now, you could argue whether the decision was correct in the long run, but, the decision was made by the third umpire and not necessarily me.
Yeah, and you mentioned there were 3 umpires that day. There were 2 umpires this day. Can you clarify Billy Doctorow's role in this? People have said that you simply sort of frog-marched him around, that you did what you wanted to do, and that he was simply compliant, you being the senior umpire. Now, is that how it was, or did Billy Doctorow, as your partner and colleague, play an equal part?
No, he played an equal part, and I'd like to see any videotape of me frog-marching Billy around the Oval at any stage. There was no coercion, and those things can't happen unless both umpires agree. Look, again, I'm an easy target in that regard, aren't I? Because people say strength of character sometimes can be mistaken for obstinance or arrogance. But the fact was that if Billy Doctorow had said to me, "No, I don't believe the condition of the ball has been changed," well, we would have played on. And that's not me swallowing my pride. That's me doing my job as an umpire. And there was agreement there that's what happened, and I can live with that. Maybe other people can't.
But it's a very important point, isn't it? In that you were almost exclusively the finger was pointed at you. I mean, why was that, do you think?
I think it's probably because of the things you've mentioned. Look, people don't like umpires and referees around the world in any sport who are who are strong on the spirit of the game and upholding the laws, so that both sides have an equal chance of playing the game, enjoying it, and hopefully winning in the end. If you allow one side to break the rules, no matter what they are, you're disadvantaging the other side. And as an umpire, why take up umpiring if that's the way you want to go about things?
Yeah.
I have a different view. I have a view that you're out there to give both sides an equal chance to win, according to the laws and the playing conditions, and that's what I believe.
Have you spoken to Billy since? Because actually, I mean, his position must have been quite interesting, really, because there he was, and some people taking the view that he was, say, being compliant and being the junior partner, and yet there he was. I mean, he was a test umpire, and as you're saying, he was playing a full part in it anyway. So I mean, was he a bit miffed by people assuming that actually he was a junior partner, if you like?
Yeah, look, he certainly said that to me in the days leading up to the initial inquiry about the ball tampering incident. He felt that he was being unfairly treated in that he had no say in it. But you've asked me a question about whether I've spoken to him. No, I haven't spoken to him since the Employment Tribunal hearing. I don't necessarily know what that reason is, but I know that he decided that he would cut off all contact with me. So, people make choices, and I respect that. If he doesn't want to exchange emails or texts anymore, well, that's his choice to do that.
Going back to that day, Daryl, when did you first look at the ball and think, oi oi?
Well, it's quite well documented, I think, and it came out during the ball tampering hearing that the ball was fine, and then within the space of 20 to 25 minutes, it wasn't fine. All I was doing, as all umpires do, is inspect the ball at regular intervals during the course of the game. We get it when a wicket falls, we take it at a drinks break. And as no wickets had fallen for some time, I was doing my duty to inspect the ball. And when I saw it, it was in an extremely, dodgy condition compared to what it was 6 or 7 overs prior.
Got scratched, presumably.
Exactly. There's no other word for it.
Yeah, so you went to Billy Doctrove. You took the ball to Billy?
Yes, I did, yeah.
And he agreed?
Yes, he did. The questions that were asked, if you care to peruse the videotape, were quite simple. I pointed out my point of view and held the ball. He looked at it, did the same, and the agreement was then made to change the ball because it had been, in our view, tampered with.
Now, this is where I started to have a bit of sympathy with the fielding side, regardless of who it is. In that the law as it stood then, and it has been changed now, hasn't it, was that in a way they had to be, I don't know, accused, tried, and penalised at that moment. In other words, 5 runs went to the scoreboard straight away, which just assumed their guilt. I mean, do you agree with that?
Look, there are many other things that the umpires need to make a decision on at that very moment as well, and whether it be a bowler running on the pitch, there's a fairly hefty penalty there for a fielding side. The bowler can be taken out of the attack. The umpires make decisions on a ball-by-ball basis that, whether they're right or wrong, will affect the outcome of the game, and some people may subsequently say that it didn't happen the way that we saw it at the time, but that's sport. I know that the England football team will have grievances about what happened in South Africa, but it was an honest decision made at the time, subsequently proven by video to be wrong. But in our case, I think that the decision you have to make, Aggers, is: are you going to allow one team to bowl with a ball that you firmly believe has been tampered with? So possibly giving them an advantage over the other side. And as an umpire, I don't believe you can let that happen.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because by awarding 5 runs, the decision has been made that they are guilty without the fielding team having had a chance in that example to say, actually, hang on, no, it wasn't us. So it was the law that actually made it a really difficult situation that afternoon, wasn't it? When you enforced the law as it stood.
And Agus, the law has been slightly reworded, but the intention is still exactly the same. The only thing that's changed is the ICC playing conditions say that the only person who can now decide whether a ball has been tampered with is the umpires need to consult with the ICC referee, and that's the confusion. The law itself is still exactly the same, with a slight rewording, if you can make any sense of that. But the intent of the law is exactly the same. The umpires on the field make the decision. The ICC playing conditions are different, and that's where the confusion arises, I think.
Yeah. When did you realise then that there was a trouble? I mean, you got through that afternoon session. You got through to tea. Were you aware then of some unhappiness in the Pakistan camp?
No, a lot of people have asked me that, and let's face it, the 5-run penalty was awarded. The batsman chose a replacement ball, which I suppose is again an inflammatory playing condition, but that's the way it had to be done. I think we played on then for another 50-odd minutes until the tea break. Now, you could argue that a team, by playing on, has accepted, what's gone on. They've accepted the decision and they've played on. It wasn't until obviously they got in the dressing rooms and that great old granddad called politics came into it, and I think that was where the real issue arose. Too many people got far too involved in it, from not only the Pakistan side but probably from the ECB as well, all about a test match that probably needs to go on, and I think they didn't do themselves any favours by getting as involved as they did.
What was the problem? That the ECB were aware that there was an issue as far as the match itself was concerned, and were therefore looking at any way, if you like, to try and resolve things and for the game to carry on?
Yeah, look, I'm not about to name the person or the persons involved right now, but I will be in my book. But there is no doubt that they got themselves involved when they probably shouldn't have, which further inflamed the situation. And I think that, in essence, the Pakistan cricket team thought they had a few allies who would assist them. And as I say, the word politics is can be used for lots of things, but it certainly got involved there. And as I say, the Pakistan team accepted the penalty until such time as they got into the dressing room, and all of a sudden they wouldn't come back out. So it's quite obvious that other factors were involved in arriving at their decision not to come back out.
And when did you realise, Daryl, that they weren't going to come out? I mean, did you go into the dressing room during tea? Did you and Billy Doctorow together go in?
No, we didn't, because Bob Wilmer had been down in our dressing room and was asking, why the ball had been changed, and we informed him. But no, we didn't. As you're aware, the umpire's room and the players' dressing rooms are some distance apart there at the Oval. We went back out, and it became quite obvious after 3 or 4 minutes that the Pakistan team were not coming out. So then we went through the processes of going up to their rooms and asking them questions, asking if they were willing to resume the game. Then we went back onto the field again, as you know, gave them the opportunity. They again didn't turn up, and we then went and told them that the match was over. So, and it wasn't until another half an hour that the Pakistan team decided that they were going to come out on the field.
And in that bit, when you went back in after that, when they didn't go out the first time, Daryl, were you and Billy Doctorow there? Were you speaking? I mean, do you look back at that particular phase and think perhaps you might have done that differently, or again, you tell me?
Well, what can you do? The two umpires walk onto the field to restart the game, and one team doesn't come out with no advice or anything like that. The laws of the game are quite clear. We had to go and investigate the reason for them not coming out. They weren't in any mood for talking when we went to the dressing room.
What happened? Did you try and go in?
It was very difficult to try and get a commitment from anybody to restart the game. We eventually had to leave it with a statement that we were going back out to restart the game, which is what we had to do under the laws anyway, and we did that. And for the second time, they refused to come out. So it wasn't just once, it was actually twice where they refused to play. And then when they were advised that the match was over, they still didn't do anything to indicate that they may be willing to play. It was only the half an hour after, when the match was well and truly ended, under the laws of the game, that they decided that they would then come out. So I mean, it's all there on record, as you say. I'm sure you were there, as were many other people, and the sequence of events is pretty much as I've just described. And you know, how many chances do you give people if they refuse to play a match?
Just get there's that visit, Darryl. That again, people talk about a lot. It's that visit that you and Billy Doctorow made after the first abortive attempt, when he went into the dressing room to find out why they hadn't come out. Was that done sympathetically, in a friendly manner? Was it done in an open way? Was it done in an encouraging way? You know, do you look back at that, or was it done in a brusque, challenging, like it or lump it sort of a way?
No, it wasn't a like it or lump it. It was very difficult to actually strike up any sort of meaningful dialogue, because it was quite obvious that we weren't welcome. All the discussions took place at the door of the dressing room. There were several people there, all trying to have their say, and you know, it really wasn't conducive to anybody wanting to listen to what we had to say. It was really a focus on you know, why did we change the ball? And Inzamam had been told on the field why the ball had been changed. He subsequently said that we never told him. But again, if you look back on the videotape, you will see Billy Doctorow and I explaining to him exactly what had happened and the reasons for it. And he knew that. To come out later and say that he wasn't aware of it is absolute nonsense.
How could it not happen again, Darryl? What could be done through this process that you experienced that could stop it happening again here today?
That would be up to the umpires on the day to decide whether they believed that a ball had been tampered with. When you say how could it not happen again, I can't answer that, because there are now other people involved, and as I say, the major point is that the ICC referee has the final say in whether a ball is tampered with, and he also has the final say as to whether a match will be forfeited. So it's I suppose you could say that ICC have taken control of that to ensure that it won't happen. It won't ensure that there is no cheating done, but it will probably ensure that another match won't end like that, which would probably be good. But you know, how much cricket do people want to watch that is actually played fairly? And that's my point. You know, it becomes a sham if one side is allowed to cheat and get away with it because the other side is disadvantaged.
Yeah. Were you had a hearing, racial discrimination hearing. You got dropped from the panel. Do you feel bitter about what happened when you were writing this book, Darryl, which I suspect you'll be getting an awful lot off your chest over your career? I mean, do you feel bitter about what has happened to you?
No, I don't feel bitter about what's happened to me, because, as I said at the start, I managed to get back to do what I believed I did well, which was umpire test matches, and I did that. And I was able to finish, probably because things were going to be rather tough for me. There wasn't going to be much leeway given, you know, for mistakes made in the future. In other words, I sniffed the air, I think, and we all know once you take your employer to court, no matter which way it turns out, it's always a pretty fragile relationship after that. So I really got what I wanted. I'm not bitter about it. I hold no grudges, but there are a couple of people who worked at ICC who lied, and you know, I don't really have much time for them.
Darryl Hare talking to me yesterday. Let's talk finally to the two Cricket Board chairmen that day. Shahryar Khan, he was chairman of the Pakistan Cricket Board. He joined us from Lahore. Hello, Mr. Khan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. It's nice to have you with us. And David Morgan is in Cardiff. He was the chairman of the ECB, of course, that day. Hello, David.
Hello, Jonathan.
Nice to have us with as well. We're trying to cram things in here a bit, so I have to keep it fairly speedy. Mr. Khan,
yes.
Darryl Hare talked about politics that day. He reckoned everything was going well until politics became involved and the boards clearly became involved. Did you put pressure on the players to make a protest?
Yes, well, I'll tell you what's happened, because a lot of things didn't come out. First of all, Inzamam, what you must understand, and he should have understood because he stood in so many matches with us, that Inzamam's English is not very good and that he needed to be sat down and explained exactly what was happening. This did not happen. Mr. Hare, with Mr. Doctor so mildly supporting him, really became the judge and the policeman and the giver of the execution all in one, and he then thereafter refused to listen to any advice. And if David Morgan is listening, I will tell you that David played a very positive role in this whole exercise, because we had told Inzamam that we know how deeply incensed you and the team are at this black mark that is being put against you, and but hang on, you've made your protest, you've not gone out, you go out now and play. And the first time round, they actually went out. There are pictures in Sky showing that Inzamam opened the door and 2-3 players stepped out with a view to starting the game again. This was the first time round. Then he didn't go out because Hare and Doctor came in from the field and they came straight up. And it was at 4:44 that Daryl Hare opened the door and spoke to Inzamam in a very brusque manner. I mean, it was highly impolite. I was there. I was sitting in the corner over there. And he said, are you going to go out or not? And if not, I will penalize you again. And then he banged the door and he left. Now, Inzamam, after having persuaded his players to go out and play 5 minutes earlier, was now doubly incensed at this rudeness and brusqueness. And so they decided that with this kind of attitude, which they had known from Hare for a long time, not just the Oval Test, but over the last 2-3 years, and whenever he had stood in our matches, and we had told the ICC that please, we respect all umpires, give us any umpire, but not Mr. Hare. He seems to have a problem with us. But they didn't change, and during the whole series, his attitude was very peremptory. And then what happened was that Inzamam refused to go out. And it was at this point that I and others, Bob Woolmer, Zahir Abbas, we all said, look, the ball tampering affair is going to be adjudicated upon by the match referee and by the anyone that the ICC appoints. And then what happened was that David Morgan came in and he said, let me have a word with Inzamam. And he did. He persuaded him. And as a result of David's persuasions behind the scene, Inzamam and his team said, okay, we'll go out and play. You'll recall that they changed and they went out. They went out for 5 minutes practicing, but the umpires didn't come out. And Mr. Hare had decided that the match is over.
Well, Mr. Hare,
David tried.
Mr. Hare and Mr. Doctor.
I tried, everyone tried.
Yeah.
But Daryl Hare wouldn't listen.
Can I just put it to you, Sherry Khan, that Daryl Hare would say, as I think Billy Doctorow would, that the two umpires were simply applying the law of the game, and they felt that the ball had been tampered with, and therefore they had to apply the laws as they stood.
Yes, of course they have every right to apply the law, but you know, cricket is a game. You have to save the game. You have to save cricket. You can't just, in 6 minutes, it took exactly 6 minutes for Mr. Hare to give the ultimatum, go out onto the field again, and then take off the bail. 6 minutes to ruin a match, to ruin the spectacle for all the players. And then, later on, Jonathan, we met at the behest of the match referee, Michael Proctor. And he chaired the meeting. We were all there. I was there, Inzamam was there, Andrew Strauss was there, the management was there. David Morgan was there, David Collier was there. And the first thing he said is, now, let's leave what has happened. For that, we are going to have an inquiry, whether the ball was tampered. Now let's get on with the game. I said we are willing to, we were willing to, and we were willing to do so now, tomorrow morning. And Andrew Strauss said the same thing. David Morgan said the same thing. Bob Woolmer said the same thing. And Proctor had called that meeting in order to start the match the next day.
Let's bring in David Morgan, Mr. Cullen, because the umpires are coming out here, and thankfully we've got a Pakistan team with them, which is good. They're waiting on the side. Have a very good day, Mr. Khan, by the way.
Yeah, we're having a good day. But one last word.
Go on.
That whatever Mr. Hare said, has been adjudicated upon by the Ranjan Madugali and by a QC, and it has been proved that he was wrong, and we were in the right in contesting that the ball had not been tampered. This has been proved.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. I'm going to say cheerio to you. We've got to get David Morgan. Thank you for joining us. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Sherry Khan, who was the chairman of the PCB that day. David Morgan, listening from Cardiff. Did the ECB put pressure on to get the game going, David, after the bails have been removed?
No, I spoke with Inzamam, as Sherry has just indicated. I had no difficulty in communicating with him at all. He was contrite. I mean, he wasn't in any way wound up. He was very contrite and readily agreed that the Pakistan team should take the field. They did so. The umpires weren't to be found. I then found them in the match referee's office and talked to Mike Proctor, who was the match referee, and he said to me that he wanted the game resumed, and I said, well, why not instruct the umpires to take the field? Mr. Hare's response was, and I remember these words, these are the actual words, if you send me out there, you'll make a monkey of me. And Billy Doctrove then said, I couldn't do it without Darrell. And we then had the formal meeting that Mr. Khan has referred to, chaired by Mr. Proctor, which had the two captains, the two board chairmen, David Collier, and the two team managers.
So, did you think there was a real chance at any stage, once those bails are taken off, or was it simply that the decision had been taken, the umpire had made it, and that was that?
Well, no, we thought that there was every chance that the next day's play would have been a full day.
Why was nothing said? I remember sitting here and with 20,000 people in the ground, there wasn't a single announcement for hours. Nobody knew what on earth was going on. The umpires had taken the bails off and so on. Why was nothing said to anybody?
It was really difficult. In fairness to the Surrey people, David Stewart and Paul Sheldon were at the door waiting for information, and David Collier and I was simply telling them that we were very hopeful that play would resume the next day, but it was extremely difficult to give any firm information. But in summary, everybody in that formal meeting had decided that they wanted the game resumed, including Duncan Fletcher and Andrew Strauss. They all wanted the game to resume, and Mr. Hare was clearly unprepared to do so. Malcolm Speed had been contacted. He was in touch with Darrell Hare, but unfortunately we failed to have that cricket match resumed.
One more question for you, David. Everyone talks about, every time it's Darrell Hare. Darrell Hare, Darrell Hare, Darrell Hare. He will say that there's a partner with me, Billy Doctrove, who made all these decisions with me. You've said it, Sherry Khan has said it. Every mention is all of Darrell Hare and never of Billy Doctrove.
Well, I can say to you that when I first approached Mike Proctor, and the four umpires were with him, Mr. Proctor said, yes, I will instruct the umpires to take the field. Darrell made that statement to the effect that he would not do so, and Billy Doctrove was simply compliant and said I couldn't do it without Darrell.
So it was that moment, really, that you would say that Darrell Hare decided that that was the outcome of the game, and that was that?
Without doubt.
Do you think that the right decision has now been made about the result? That again, I mean, I think there was some bafflement when it was overturned. An England victory then became a draw because of all that could have happened with that. I mean, if you're losing a test match, you can simply walk off back in the dressing room, not come out, and you're awarded a draw rather than losing the game. You now think that's been reverted back to an England win is the right thing. Is that the right thing to have happened now?
Well, changing the result was an appalling decision on the part of ICC. Of that there was no doubt, and I was determined upon taking on the presidency. One of my objectives was to have that result returned to the correct match result, which in the circumstances was an England win, and I persuaded the board to do that, and they accepted it.
David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
David Morgan, who was the chairman of the ECB that day, of course, joining us from Cardiff. Thanks for everyone who took part, to Daryl Hare, to Shahryar Khan, and of course to David.
On digital and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
bbc.co.uk/5 Live.